more cohesive, and in a more uncertain and dangerous world, it's going to strengthen our country's security and resilience. So for all these reasons, I think this is absolutely the right thing to do.
Meanwhile, the Labour leader has described the Conservatives' plans to reintroduce national service as desperate. Speaking after his first keynote speech of the campaign, Sir Keir Starmer dismissed the Prime Minister's proposals.
You've got desperate policies being made up on the hoof by the Tory party, and then the image of their party arguing about the policy they only announced in the last couple of days. And that, in a way, is the choice at the election, a Labour Party that is laser-focused on the issues that really matter to people in saying we're going to fight for you, and a Conservative Party that's out of road, out of ideas, driven by chaos and division, and that has a cost, a human cost.
The Royal Navy's Type 45 destroyer HMS Duncan has been deployed to the Red Sea. The warship left Portsmouth on Monday and will replace its sister ship HMS Diamond, which has been deployed in the region to deter Houthi attacks since before Christmas. The Ministry of Defence says during its time in the Red Sea, HMS Diamond has shot down 9 drones and 1 missile launched by Houthis from the coast of Yemen at cargo ships. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews/alerts. Now it's back to Patrick.
The general election campaign is off to a flyer. Nigel Farage lit a fuse on Sunday when he said this to Sky News' Trevor Phillips.
We have a growing number of young people in this country who do not subscribe to British values, in fact, loathe much of what we stand for. So what do you do?
Who are we talking about there?
Oh, I think we see them on the streets of London every Saturday.
What do they look like? Oh, we're talking about...
What do they look like?
Are we talking about Muslims here?
We are. And I'm afraid I found some of the recent surveys saying that 46% of British Muslims support Hamas.
Are you sure you want to make the blanket accusation that you've just made that Muslims are somehow less patriotic than other British people? Because those people on those demonstrations are British.
Did you watch the recent elections that took place up and down the country?
We don't know that, and we don't know they support Hamas. Would you like to revisit what you said at all?
Let's be clear. There is a growing population of people in this country, a lot of them very young, who have recently been voting for and electing candidates, right, up and down the country, in inner cities, who stand for a set of values that are completely, not only don't subscribe to our values, but in many cases are totally against our values.
So what Nigel was quoting there was a report from the Henry Jackson Society that revealed that 52% of British Muslims want to make it illegal to show a picture of the Prophet Muhammad. 32% of British Muslims favour the implementation of Sharia law. Almost half of British Muslims apparently feel more sympathy with Hamas than Israel. It was younger British Muslims who were most likely to think that Hamas carried out no atrocities on October the 7th. Now, Trevor Phillips was doing a good impression of a man who was completely and utterly perplexed by this. And he carried on pretending to be shocked.
Key to immigration is integration. If you get integration, it works. What we've done is, and this works on several levels. We've done...
I'm going to stop you there, and I'm going to say 2 things.
Well, here's the difference.
No, I'm going to tell you something about the difference. First of all, you're right, I come from that stock. But let us remember that my stock, my ancestors, for the best part of 700 or 800 years, were Muslims until they were forcibly converted to Christians by slave owners. So when you talk about Muslims as hostile to British values, I've got to say, I don't really... Let me finish what I'm going to say. I don't really see how you arrive at that conclusion.
Well, the fact is that Trevor Phillips himself conducted an absolutely excellent report into the British Muslim community, which revealed several things. Only 34% would inform the police if they thought somebody they knew was getting involved with people who support terrorism in Syria. 52% do not believe that homosexuality should be legal in Britain. 23% support the introduction of Sharia law. 32% refuse to condemn those who take part in violence against those who mock the Prophet. 39% agree that wives should always obey their husbands, and 44% would not completely condemn those people who take part in stoning those who commit adultery. So Mr Phillips knows all of this stuff. I mean, in fact, Trevor Phillips was actually suspended from the Labour Party amid allegations of Islamophobia because he made comments about British Pakistani men sexually abusing girls, the refusal of some Muslims to wear a poppy, and he said that some Muslims are, quote, different, although he went on to say that he thought that was admirable. I mean, he was, by the way, rightly, subsequently reinstated to the Labour Party. Well, since that interview, several prominent MPs, including Tory MP Steve Baker and Labour's Dawn Butler, have condemned Nigel's comments. Baker called them ignorant and offensive. Dawn Butler just said it was blatant racism. Well, it raises the question, doesn't it? Was what Nigel said racist, or was it absolutely fair enough? Let's get our thoughts, my panel. This evening, I have got Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, I have got journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and the political correspondent at The Spectator, James Heal. Carol, racist or fair enough?
I don't think it was racist or Islamophobic. Never mind all the figures that you just quoted there, about the homosexuality not being legal in this country. There was also a warning that 46% of British Muslims say that we shouldn't have homosexual teachers in this country either. It's not acceptable. Think about what I'm thinking about the Muslims that don't who don't want to adhere to British values. I'm not talking about the majority, I'm talking about a sizable minority. We're talking about those communities where Sharia law is practiced, a law that completely disenfranchises women in this country. Let's talk about the honour killings that go on in this country, which have increased 82% in the last 5 years. Honour abuse has increased by 82% in the last 5 years. Honour killings have increased. We have between 12 and 15 a year. We have female genital mutilation still happening in this country. None of these things fit in with British values. They are totally against British values, and most of them hurt women in some which way. So for me, it's to accuse him of Islamophobia or being racist for pointing out that there are different values. I don't think it's just among the young particularly. I think it's among older Muslims. You had a cleric on this programme not too very long ago who said he was justifying why it's OK for men to have sex with 13-year-old girls.
Yeah, it was astonishing. Well, one of the things that I will say about that Nigel Farage-Trevor Phillips exchange is that I do think that if Nigel had come with the fact that Trevor Phillips' own report had published, then that probably would have helped him out a bit in that situation. Benjamin, are you considering this to be racist, or do you think that this is actually fair enough? And maybe for the first time we've got a quote-unquote mainstream British politician saying this stuff in the run-up to an election?
I think there are two different things here. One is that I think telling a group of people that othering them, that they are on the outside, that they don't have British values, does nothing to solve the problem of lack of integration. I find it odd that when we, obviously the views that some Muslims hold on gay people are wrong. I clearly disagree with them. But it's also the case that only a week or 2 weeks ago, there was a poll that found that well over a third of over 70s in this country believe that being gay is wrong. And yet most of those are likely to be white and maybe Christian, and nobody says that they lack British values. So I think sometimes it's rather
we would actually. We would say that. I mean, you're saying that people would not say. I think the majority of people in this country would say that was not right.
Well, I mean, I'd be amazed if any politician went on a programme in a general election and said to those 70-year-olds that you don't have British values because you think being gay is wrong. I bet you they wouldn't have that background. But let me make the other point, which is that there is a problem with extremism in Islam in this country, and we have failed to stand up to those people. And one of the worst things about the fact that we failed to stand up to them is when, for example, you have people in Batley or in Birmingham that are lecturing teachers, are lecturing politicians and police and telling them what to do. They are letting down all the other Muslims that are moderate and trying to have their voices heard.
All right, now I'm just going to introduce a clip here, and this is the deputy leader of the Labour Party, Angela Rayner. I believe that she's in Ashton, and she appears to be trying to appease a group of Muslim voters who, as I understand it, were formerly Labour voters, but may not be anymore. I'm very intrigued to see what you all make of this.
Now, I know that people are angry about what's happening in the Middle East, and I said live on TV, and I say to this day, if me resigning as an MP now would bring a ceasefire, I would do it. I would do it. Only last week, the Labour Party were supporting the ICC. The Conservatives didn't support the ICC. So with this general election on that issue, we can't affect anything when we're not in government. And if Labour get into power, we will recognise Palestine.
So she said quite a lot there. James, I'll bring you in here on this now. I mean, is that just simping for votes?
I think it shows perhaps the extent to which Labour's concerned about the problem post-Gaza with certain sections of their kind of traditional core vote here. Ashton-under-Lyme is where George Galloway chose to launch his Workers' Party, a campaign, I think, last week. Angela Rayner has a majority of just around 4,000 or so. So what Angela Rayner was there saying, I think, was something that the Labour Party's been trying to get across, which is that actually, you know, we may have come late to a ceasefire, but we will support it within Parliament. And I think it really shows the concern that Labour has around traditional Labour voters who are Muslim who might have deserted the party post-7th of October.
Yeah, I wonder, though, Carol, when you look at that, whether or not that's a little indication of what we might get under Labour, which is, you know, the total appeasement of the quotes-unquote Muslim vote.
Well, you know, Angela Rayner has also self-interest here because George Galloway said he was going to put a candidate up against her, that he had a candidate ready to go against her. So in her case, it's self-preservation. But, you know, we can't pretend, you know, Ben alluded to that, we can't pretend there isn't a problem in this country with a sizable minority of Muslims who really do not like what we stand for. You know, we have schools operating in this country, you know, in Muslim schools where, you know, boys and girls are segregated. We have Muslim organisations that support segregation and blasphemy laws. That is not in tune with British values, and yet we don't attack them. We're not allowed to attack them. If that was happening in a Christian community or a Jewish community, it would be attacked, and it isn't. And we're not allowed to criticise Islam in the way other religions are criticised.
OK. Benjamin, what do you make of what we saw from Angela Rayner there?
I mean, look, I think the idea that Labour is seriously threatened by Muslims not continuing to vote Labour is massively overstated.
Don't think it
because
is.
the Muslim populations are heavily populated, heavily concentrated in about 40 constituencies, which have large Labour majorities. So there's a very small number that are likely to not be Labour if they don't vote that. But I actually think the fact that at past elections 60 or 70% of British Muslims vote Labour shows that they are integrated in mainstream British society, because the Labour Party has been socially liberal for 25 years, and most Muslims clearly know what they're voting for, and they vote for that party because they're willing to compromise on different things if they might not necessarily agree. I think that the fact that Muslims vote Labour is an endorsement of modern Britain.
I think there is also legitimate concerns about things like what we saw in the Rochdale branch of the Labour Party there, what was going on with the comments that were made quite openly, which led to the suspension of the candidate back at the beginning of February, Ali, and I think that shows perhaps that in certain areas of the Labour Party there is concern about what's going on there.
OK.
But wasn't there a recent poll that said a massive percentage of Muslims were deserting Labour because of their stance over Gaza? You might know the details of that more than me.
Well, I think there was some polling out at the end of last year about it, and I think that if you do talk to Labour MPs, they're certainly very concerned about that.
Yeah.
But the West Midlands mayoral election, where Labour quite surprisingly beat Andy Street, that is a very considerable Muslim population, and still the Labour Party was victorious.
I agree with you, but a considerable number of that population voted for Ahmed Yaqub, who
about 10%.
Yeah, well, that's large. And he's standing in Birmingham Ladywood, which is, I believe, Shabana Mahmood's constituency, who initially, I think, abstained from a ceasefire vote. And there's a huge Muslim population there. He is running with the campaign literature of him stood in front of a Palestinian flag. That I think, for many people, might be a concern. Look, coming up, Reform UK leader Richard Tice gives his exclusive take on the backlash facing Nigel Farage. Does he back his man on what we've just been talking about there? Find out shortly. Plus, I will show you the highlights from an institution of the Great British Summer. But up next, Keir Starmer has branded it the teenage dad's army. But is there more to the Tories' National Service plan than meets the eye? Could it actually prove an inspired policy? Former president of the Birmingham Young Conservatives, Harvey Whitby, who, get this, defected to the Lib Dems over this plan, goes head-to-head with former senior military intelligence officer Philip Ingram. That's next, and it's not to be missed.
GBNews Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Emma, let's start, shall we, with Prince William confirming on the Isles of Scilly yesterday that Kate is doing well. I thought it was a very brave lady to say, "Are we allowed to ask how the Princess of Wales is?" And I thought, well, we're not, so good for you.
Yeah. One of the hospitals he visited on the Isles of Scilly, an administrator, a hospital administrator, asked him how Kate was doing, and he said, "She's doing well, thanks."
Until we hear official word from the palace, then we're just going to have to rely on little snippets like this.
It does seem to be serious. So,
It does.
we wish her
What's
very
quite
best.
telling as well, I went through some of the social media comments on this, and people that live on the Isle of Scilly were just like saying how close they got, how wonderful it was. He's supporting local businesses, and that pasty shop will now be like treasured, you know, forever. That people forever go there.
On the Quay. It sounds great. It's called On the Quay.
Compare and contrast with this "I feel at home in Nigeria" vibe that Meghan's putting out. Two very, very different takes on how to be a royal.
Do they want to be royals or do they not? Because they seem to want sort of half the trappings but without all the kind of responsibilities.
These two brothers, who obviously went through a lot growing up, obviously can't stand the sight of each other right now, and it's just really sad.
Well, it goes beyond the brothers. I mean, we are told from some of the papers this morning that the King didn't have time in his schedule to see his son because he was actually meeting David Beckham for a private meeting.
Well, who would you choose?
All about priorities.
I mean, I know who
It's all about priorities.
But, you know, you surely, I mean, you could just pop in as well. I reckon that Harry and Bex are pals, probably. So what's gone on there, and will they ever be able to repair things?
And they really were so close. I mean, when you compare the Buckingham Palace garden party, a couple of miles down the road, literally Harry was at Westminster or wherever it was. It wasn't far. And it absolutely would have been possible for him to
3
go.
miles apart, and yet absolutely worlds apart in terms of their emotional state.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Coming up, we speak to Reform UK leader Richard Tice. But first, is national service a bad idea? It's time for tonight's head-to-head. So, the Prime Minister took Saturday off the campaign trail to regroup, apparently, but that very evening, just 2 days after the Defence Minister insisted that there was no plans for compulsory national service, the government announced exactly that. They say that it will boost future career prospects for youngsters, but not everyone seems keen. Government Minister and former RAF officer Steve Baker tweeted that the policy was developed by a political advisor or advisors and sprung on candidates, some of whom are relevant ministers. Keir Starmer's not a fan either, mocking Sunak's plans as a teenage dad's army.
The desperate idea that the Tories are flinging on the table of some sort of national service, which isn't thought through. All the military leaders who've got experience are saying it won't work, it'll take resource away from our military, our defence. That's the last thing we need. The government's already hollowed out the army. It's smaller than since Napoleonic times. So, you know, in the end, and they're taking money from the Lifting Up Fund to do it. I mean, I think it's absolutely important in this election to focus on what is uppermost in people's minds, which is the cost of living crisis and the NHS.
Well, the Gen Z brigade are being derided on TikTok in clips like this. Well, thankfully, the Prime Minister has come out to reassure them.
TikTok. Sorry to be breaking into your usual politics-free feed, but I'm making a big announcement today, and I've been told that a lot of you already have some views on it. So, first thing, no, I'm not sending everyone off to join the army. What I am doing is proposing a bold new model of national service for 18-year-olds. They'll be able to choose to spend 12 months in a full-time military commission, or 1 weekend per month volunteering in roles within your local community.
So tonight I am asking, is national service actually a bad idea? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/your say or tweet me at GBNews. And while you're there, make sure you go and vote in our poll. But first, going head-to-head on this, the former president of the Birmingham Young Conservatives, Harvey Whitby, who resigned and switched to the Liberal Democrats over this, and former senior military intelligence officer Philip Ingram. Look, both of you, thank you very, very much. Harvey, I will start with you. Look, I mean, you don't have to join the army. You can just deliver prescriptions to the elderly 1 weekend a month. What's so bad about that?
Mainly the fact that you could already have a job at this point. You could already be working, and they just expect you to drop everything and run to do whatever they tell you to do.
OK. For Britain, though?
Well, then again, they're not earning any money, so it's not benefiting the economy in any real form.
OK. All right. Philip, I'll just ask you about this. You are against national service as a whole, I think, but I think my understanding is you think this particular version of it might be all right.
I am against national service as a whole because it would turn our professional military from being a professional fighting force into being a professional training organisation. But this isn't asking us to train every 18-year-old to join the military. It's only 30,000, and in the last year we've trained 30,000 Ukrainians to go to the front line without that impacting our professional capability. So that would help, and it will give those individuals skill sets. Again, those individuals that need to that will be volunteering in the community, it will give them skill sets and give them greater insights into what's making the community ticking. You know, the scepticism about forcing people out of jobs, I think the rules haven't been laid out yet in detail, and therefore if individuals are in employment, there will be a degree of flexibility. But 1 weekend a month is not going to be very onerous in any way, shape or form.
Yeah, I mean, Harvey, I do put that to you, and with respect, given your last answer saying it's not going to benefit the economy, I wonder if you're fundamentally misunderstanding the second word of this, which is service, and that actually you might actually just be helping people to get things like prescriptions or indeed things like search and rescue. I would have thought that someone who was politically minded like yourself might be quite in favour of that. You don't care?
No, I do care. It's just if these people don't want to do it in the first place, they're not going to have the will to want to do it. It's going to be like a group of people who really don't want to be there doing jobs that people could do and get paid to do.
Yeah, but the problem is, Harvey, that we've got 409,000 unemployed 18 to 24-year-olds. That was of January to March 2024. 1.9 million of you are economically inactive. So this might actually be quite a good way of getting people off their backsides, teach them a few skills, teach them a little bit of oomph in their life. Is that not a particularly good idea?
No, it can be, but again, I just don't think this government will be able to do it in a way which would be effective anyway. I feel like majority of people will be stuck doing jobs they don't really want to do.
As opposed to the Liberal Democrats, which you've defected to, what's so good about them?
They offer a true centre way, and they offer policies which I feel are way more realistic than the Conservatives offer right now.
Like what?
Like they want to have a fair and a free government rather than a government which is enforcing rules and stuff onto teenagers who don't really want to do it in the first place.
Any particular policies specifically?
Their policies on focusing on youth issues mainly. I quite like their views on how they want to get like everyone available for like doctors and stuff, rather than how the Conservatives are just a bit hearsay, way-say.
OK. Philip, I'll throw it back to you here. I suppose one of the big questions is resources. Do we have enough resources to look after the 30,000 people a year who might decide that they actually want to take an active role in our armed forces?
Well, there'd need to be additional accommodation built or found. There is additional accommodation around. It wouldn't be comfortable. But then if you're doing a degree of national service for a year, you can put up with a bit of discomfort. It would be good for the recruiting of the military, because a lot of those would get the chance of a taster of a job in the military without actually having to sign up for 3 or 5 years. And I think a lot of people would suddenly decide that they quite liked it and there were real opportunities to stay on, and that would help fix some of the recruiting problems that there are. And going back into the volunteering side of society, you're going out and getting skills like you're working with St John's Ambulance, working with the police cadets, working in the local communities and providing support into local communities would give those disaffected youths who couldn't be bothered doing anything, as our other guest has just said, give them some of that motivation or the proverbial kick up the backside that they need to get off their backsides and go out and start to be economically contributing to the country. And it would do them some longer term good, I think.
Exactly. Look, Harvey, I think it's a relevant question in all this. How economically active are you, my good man? What do you do?
I've been working since I was 16. I've had a job since I was legally able to. And I feel like if I'd had a gap in between that, it would have really affected my ability to work and then progress into university.
The question I would say is you don't really have to have a gap, though, do you, is the thing? I mean, you could voluntarily decide to join the armed forces. Fine, that is a gap. OK, I appreciate that. But, one weekend a month doing things like cleaning graffiti off the walls outside a local supermarket or, I don't know, litter picking, or maybe something a bit more proactive, like, paying a visit to the elderly at a care home or something along those lines. I mean, that's in a country where we don't appear at the moment anyway to have a huge amount of national pride, certainly amongst the youngsters. Is that not a sacrifice you would have been willing to make?
I would be willing to do that anyway. It's more so the fact that with this method that the Conservatives are going down, doing the whole 30,000 people in the army, you'll have 30,000 people who are either that's the best option for them rather than going into the community service option, or they're still not going to be as enticing and as wanting to be there like people that would voluntarily join the military in the first place.
I think, Philip,
and it will affect morale.
I think, Philip, the thing with this is that actually those 30,000 people would voluntarily be there. That's the point, right? We're not dragging people like Harvey out of bed. We're saying that of the 700,000 or so people who leave school every single year, 30,000 of those would presumably voluntarily join to do a year's military service.
Well, exactly, and it will only take volunteers, and then those volunteers, if there's more than 30,000, will be weeded down. As I say, it'll give people a taster without having to commit right up front. There's 750,000 18-year-olds around in the country. You said there's 400,000 in employment at the moment. 1 weekend a month for 12 months isn't going to be onerous whatsoever. That's in there. But there's over 300,000 18-year-olds who are completely inactive and they need to contribute something to society.
All right. Look, Harvey, final one to you. I do worry, my good man, whether or not you've maybe considered your future political career in all of this, possibly before it's even
I'm not
properly started.
Career, really.
Well, you joined the Liberal Democrats. I just wonder, is that a particularly good look? So young in your career to be what some people might consider a turncoat?
Well, I don't think I can honestly look people in the eye and support a party that I can't look people in the eye and tell them to vote for a party that I wouldn't vote for myself.
And have the Birmingham Young Conservatives found a replacement in this bustling election period? Have you left them in the lurch?
I wouldn't know. I'm not
even bothered, Jack? No. OK.
I'm not involved in that anymore.
Not anymore, no. OK. All right, both of you, thank you very, very much. There's the former president of the Birmingham Young Conservatives, Harvey Whitby there, and former senior military intelligence officer, Philip Ingram. Right, OK, so I think it's time to see if we've got a result of a poll here. Who do you agree with? Is Rishi Sunak's plan for national service a good or bad idea? Paul on X says, with 2 wars underway, Rishi Sunak's plan for national service is a sign of where things may be headed. I mean, Paul, there absolutely is that concern. Yes, 100%. Michael, via Your Say, says, I have said for years that bringing it back would be a good thing. If we had it, there would be less hooligans on our streets because it would have been knocked out of them by instilling discipline. And Janice says, As I said last night, I'd get them filling potholes. Well, we can't have enough of that, Janice. I'm bang in favour of it. Look, your verdict is now in. 55% of you think it's a good idea, whilst 45% of you are against it. Well, coming up, Wes Streeting's whirlwind 180 on trans issues continues, as he now says that people fighting for single-sex spaces are not bigots. But can women actually trust Labour to protect their rights? Former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, gives an unfiltered take on that, and the Tories' campaign chaos as the party battles mutiny, defections, a candidate crisis, and a minister jetting off on holiday. But first, Nigel Farage, he's been condemned by some for speaking what he believes is the truth about some British Muslims.
Candidates, right, up and down the country, in inner cities, who stand for a set of values that are completely, not only don't subscribe to our values, but in many cases are totally against our values.
But what does Reform leader Richard Tice make of this media storm that his honorary president has sparked? I speak to him next.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So plenty of heavy showers and some outbreaks of rain are on the way over the next couple of days, but there will be some brightness in between. This is all thanks to this area of low pressure situated to the north of the UK, bringing us those heavy showers. But low pressure sits out in the west, bringing some further outbreaks of rain through the rest of Monday and into Tuesday. Plenty of heavy showers continuing into the first part of this evening, but gradually easing overnight with some clear spells developing, particularly for Scotland, northern and eastern parts of England, but down towards the southwest, outbreaks of rain pushing their way north and eastwards into the early hours of the morning, and a mild night here under all that cloud and rain, temperatures around 12 or 13 degrees. Under those clearer spells though, perhaps a little bit of a chillier start with temperatures down into the low single figures, and it does mean a bit of a brighter start here. However, across parts of Wales and southern parts of England, heavy and persistent rain slowly pushes its way north and eastwards through Tuesday morning, and for Northern Ireland as well, that persistent rain continues through much of Tuesday. For Scotland and northeastern parts of England though, a bit of a brighter start, albeit a bit of a chilly start with those temperatures in those low single figures to start, but there will be some sunshine through the morning. However, as we head through Tuesday afternoon, that area of rain continues to push its way north and eastwards as we head through the latter half of the day, again turning quite heavy across northern parts of England and southern parts of Scotland too, so turning much cloudier across Scotland in towards the afternoon. Heavy showers then breaking out across Northern Ireland, Wales and southern parts of England through Tuesday afternoon, and temperatures again around about average for the time of year, around 17 or 18 degrees in the south, but definitely feeling a little cooler under all that cloud and rain. Through Tuesday evening, the rain continues to push its way northwards, although continuing to persist for a time across parts of Scotland, and further outbreaks of rain across southern parts of England as well. There'll be plenty of showers on the way through Wednesday and Thursday, but there are some hints of something a little more settled on the way as we head through the latter half of the week.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Lively show coming your way. Still to come, Kelvin McKenzie on whether we can actually trust Labour to protect women's spaces. We've also got a debate between a revolutionary communist and someone who has survived communism, so that should be enlightening. But first, it is time for Reform UK leader Richard Tice. Yes, earlier today I caught up with Mr Tice as he continued his campaign trail on the Isle of Wight. I grilled him on a range of topics, including Nigel Farage's much-spoken-about comments on immigration, reforms, quite poorly attended campaign launch, and he hits back at the Tories over their plans for national service. Let's have a little look, shall we? I'm very pleased now to be joined by the leader of the Reform Party. It's Richard Tice. Richard, thank you so much for giving us your time today. I know that you are pounding the pavements on the campaign trail. I want to start by asking about a very controversial moment that happened over the weekend. It was Nigel Farage on Trevor Phillips.
The key to immigration is integration. If you get integration, it works. What we've done is, and this works on several levels. What we've done...
I'm going to stop you there, and I'm going to say two things.
Well, here's the difference.
No, I'm going to tell you something about the difference. First of all, you're right, I come from that stock. But let us remember that my stock, my ancestors, for the best part of 700 or 800 years, were Muslims until they were forcibly converted to Christians by slave owners. Let me ask you to put yourself in the shoes of a British Muslim, and can you imagine how offensive that feels?
So, Richard, what do you make of what Nigel said there about the Muslim community?
Patrick, it's not a controversial moment, except to the rather woke lefties who are full of identity politics. May I remind you that the interviewer, one Trevor Phillips, in 2016 said, Muslims are not like us, and we should just accept they will never integrate. So I think it's a bit rich for Trevor Phillips and all those around him all of a sudden to claim that Nigel can't have a sensible discussion about the fact that the vast majority of Muslims in the UK and all over the world are great, peace-loving, hard-working, aspirational, community-giving people. But there is an element, and we have to be honest about it and have this discussion, a meaningful element who don't share our culture and values. For example, we know that in a recent big survey by the Henry Jackson Society, they found that 18 to 24-year-olds, 47% of British 18 to 24-year-olds didn't think that Hamas carried out any atrocities of rape and murder on October the 7th. 32% want Sharia law imposed in the United Kingdom. So it's fairly obvious that there's a significant element who don't share
how big
our
a part,
values
Richard,
of tolerance and compassion.
Yeah, how big a part of the Reform election campaign is this? Is the issue with certain pockets of the Islamic community?
It's not a part of our campaign at all. It's just a statement of fact in response to the question from Trevor Phillips about the Tory party's absurd national service pledge, which is basically an attempt to steal Reform voters. We're campaigning on this is an immigration election because mass immigration, which is a complete betrayal of what the Tories promised and which Labour want to continue or increase, is adding unsustainable pressure on housing, particularly for young people, increasing housing rents by some 20% plus in just 2 years alone. That's unfair. It's increasing pressure on the health service, leading to longer ambulance delays, A&E waits, operational waiting lists. That's unfair, particularly for the lowest paid, the poorest in society. And it's depressing British wages. Again, most unfair on the youngest people. So that's a key part of our campaign, as well as the fact that we're the only party with a serious pledge and plan and proposal to get to zero waiting lists on healthcare in this country and then keep them there by investing more money.
What is that plan, Richard? Just to emphasise, can I ask what that plan is about the zero waiting list? I think that's really important for people to hear. What is it?
It's really important, and we're the only plan. What you've got to do is you've got to you simply use a lot more of the independent healthcare sector and capacity, which will mushroom and grow. For example, if you can afford to pay a bit more, then actually we should encourage you not to use the NHS, use the independent sector. We'll give you tax relief at 20% on health insurance or independent self-pay. That'll ease the pressure on the NHS. Everyone's a winner. Therefore, you get faster and better outcomes and care on the NHS. Likewise, actually, that's also what you should do, by the way, with school fees, as opposed to this absurd plan of the Labour. Thirdly, And critically, our economic plan is actually, it's the plan to help the working class the most, because Reform UK is the party of the working class. You lift the income tax starting point to £20,000 from £12,500.
Okay.
That's a net extra £30 a week. 7 million people, the lowest paid of the working class, pay zero income tax. Everyone's a winner.
You mentioned about this national service thing being an attempt to steal Reform voters. I mean, it would work, though, because the latest polling suggests that the highest group of people who have the most approval of this are Reform voters, with 38% of them thinking that this national and community service thing from the Tories is a good idea. Do you wish you'd have come up with it?
But lots of people think they've come up with a good idea that sounds nice on theory on paper until you dig into the realities of the practicalities of it. About a minute later, you realise there's only 75,000 people in the army now. It used to be 100,000 plus just a few years ago before the Tories diminished our defence capability. The idea that 75,000 people can all of a sudden look after 30,000 different people every year is completely for the birds. The military don't want it. They want long-term, committed volunteers to do an incredibly professional job. Now, you might well say there's a completely different debate about having some form of national civic contribution for youngsters. That's a whole different thing. But this idea that you can sort of dress Tory sort of voters who've defected to Reform and tempt them back by pledging another thing that we know is never going to happen, because the Tories never do anything they actually say they're going to do, like reduce immigration, it's for the birds. And our voters will see it for what it is. It's a con trick, it's a nonsense, and people will just ignore it.
OK, now, your actual seat that you're standing in is Boston and Skegness. Now, that is the Brexit voting capital of Britain, I believe. It is also one of the areas that has had the highest level of net, potentially low-skilled immigration as well. I've been there myself. I did a show from there, actually, our net migration special a year or so ago. I can't help but noticing that apparently there were about 19 people at your campaign launch there. If you can't win there, it does beg the question, where on earth could Reform win?
Absolute nonsense, Patrick. I've had so much support there. That was just one small part of a very good day. Just going down the high street in Skegness, huge support and recognition. We've got a cracking chance of winning there and in other seats. Lee Anderson's going to win his seats. We're going to win seats very simply because millions and millions of people are going to vote for us. And here's the point. What the good constituents of Boston and Skegness realise is that their wages have been depressed by mass low-skilled immigration from overseas. That's why people are so frustrated with a Ramona MP who's done nothing for the seat, voted for all of these issues, from mass immigration to wokeism to trans ideology to net zero. People don't want it, and they've had enough of it, and they're going to vote against him. They're going to vote for me, Patrick. I'm very confident about that.
Well, you can't knock his confidence. There's Richard Tice. Look, thank you very much for joining us, Richard, and I do hope to chat to you again very, very soon. That is the leader of Reform UK there, Richard Tice. Thank you. Right, coming up, service or suffrage? The Tories and Labour set out their vision for the youth.
If you're 16 and 17, you can start a family, and I think you're entitled to have a say on who the government of the day is.
And this modern form of national service will mean that young people get the skills and the opportunities they need, which is going to serve them very well in life.
My panel are going to have a chat about what policy is best for Britain, plus what's going on here. But first, Wes Streeting performs another screeching U-turn on trans, and the Tories suffer an embarrassing defection to Reform. What does Kelvin Mackenzie make of the state of our country's two leading parties? It's unmissable, and it's next.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Well, Welsh farmer Gareth Wyn-Jones is a first-language Welsh speaker and joins us now. Gareth, I mean, a lot of people will be thinking, hang on, this guy is a Welsh teacher. He speaks English. He knew what was on the parking ticket. He's just trying to make a point. He's being a prat, isn't he?
No, hey, come on, mate. I'm a first language Welsh. It's important that we watch after our language and, you know, that everything's bilingual. For us in Wales, you wouldn't go to France and expect your ticket to be in English, would you? You know, English is the most spoken language, but let's watch after these small languages. It's part of our cultural. So, you know what, I take my hat off to the guy. Fair play to him to go out and to fight this. But what it's done is put it onto the mainstream media, and you're talking about it, even that you're calling them that. You know, at least we're having a discussion about it, and it's putting the Welsh language in the forefront. And,
So,
you know,
Gareth, this is a-
speaking Welsh is important.
Yeah, so Gareth, this is a matter of principle. Is there a sense that the Welsh language is being eradicated in Wales? Is this something that the Welsh people need to rise up against?
Well, Welsh government are trying to, you know, bring a lot more Welsh speaking into our daily life and teach people how to speak Welsh. Well, everything should be bilingual then. And I think, you know, it should start with government. So government should be putting pressure on these companies to make sure everything is bilingual. So I get behind this guy. Fair play to him. It's a good stance, and it puts it in the public eye. Let's have everything in both languages, especially Welsh, because that's my first language. And I'm
You know
not
what?
a
If
fan.
I was Welsh, I think I would agree with you. I think I would agree with you, Gareth.
It depends if you come from Wrexham.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
We'll be there.
This is GB News.
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Coming up, we all know that Labour wants to give 16-year-olds the vote and the Tories have pledged to reintroduce national service, but which policy is best for Britain / more mental? But first, Labour's Wes Streeting has admitted that he should have done more to defend women who voiced concerns about trans issues when he worked at the controversial charity Stonewall and at the National Union of Students before entering politics. Speaking at a literature and arts festival over the weekend, Streeting said, "I think it's a fair challenge and fair criticism to say that gender-critical feminists and women who raised concerns about women's-only spaces or erasure from NHS documents were written off as bigots and people shut them down." He goes on to say that was wrong. His admissions come just days after it was revealed that Labour want to make it easier to change gender, though, and it has left people scratching their heads. I'm joined now by the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie. Kelvin, is Wes Streeting performing an epic reverse ferret here?
He is indeed, and there will be lots of this. Right, lots of this, because when they all get to power, they'll say the complete opposite. But the truth about the matter is, it would be very nice to think that all politicians could say, when they had one position, actually, it was complete rubbish, because I am now seeking your vote, and actually your vote is very hostile to the trans position and very much in favour of women saying we want safe spaces. Now he's saying we should have had safe spaces. It is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know whether this is just a Labour thing, or, or is it somebody like Davey now saying about Mr Bates, oh, a great man, we should really give him the money, or is it about Conservative politicians at all? Is there something about politicians where they won't actually say what they think until somebody points out, well, that's not right, the votes aren't going for you, and in which case you then say, oh, it's the complete opposite. Thanks very much.
Well, it's something to consider for, I would argue, especially women at the general election, is Labour simultaneously saying that they protect women's space, or that they value women's spaces, whilst also pushing a policy that would essentially lead to more men able to access those women's spaces. But Kelvin, I'll shift it on now, because there's yet another sign that the Conservative Party's election campaign is growing more chaotic by the day. It's emerged that the party still needs to find about 150 candidates to stand in the election. That's the equivalent of selecting a candidate every 100 minutes for the next 12 days. The party's candidate crisis has been worsened by the ever-growing list of MPs standing down. Alok Sharma is the latest to announce his seat. Outgoing Tory MP Lucy Allen was suspended from the party. She endorsed reform today. And speaking to GB News earlier, former Tory Minister Michael Portillo had some strong words for those MPs who are looking to desert.
Members of Parliament got elected because they have constituency associations that have worked very hard for them and given them tremendous loyalty. I think it is the most profound discourtesy to give up your seat when the election is announced. If you want to leave...
We do also, for what it's worth, have Steve Baker, the Tory MP as well, who has decided to campaign from Greece. Yeah, that's right. I mean, what's going on here, Kelvin? It's chaos.
Well, honestly, I blame Sunak in the first instance. He springs July the 4th on everybody, including his own side. They feel very irritable. Loads of people are heading for the door. Personally, I'm pleased a number of them are going, to be fair, but the whole thing doesn't seem to have a core to it, to the point where Conservative Central Office are now telling MPs, get out and campaign. And the MPs are saying, actually, if you think I'm going to knock on the door and be told to bugger off by a whole load of people in a high street, you're smoking something. My bet, though, is that, strangely, come polling day, it won't be a 20 or 25% lead for the Labour Party. I think if they manage to basically get their act slightly together, and I like your line about trying to appeal to the women to say, if you want safe spaces, you vote Tory. If you want to have a chap next to you in the loo, then you should go Labour, right? Just do it like that. That would be a great campaign line. If they could get something which had a kind of surge of energy, I think that they could get down to literally single figures as the lead. I don't expect them to win.
Steve Baker's got a majority of about 5,000. He's decided that because Rishi Sunak told him to book their holidays, he's gone to Greece and will be campaigning for, is it Wickham? I think it's Wickham from Greece, which says it all. Look, you were the former editor of The Sun. When it came to elections, The Sun actually swung some elections very quickly. What kind of front page do you think you'd be running on the eve of the election?
Well, I think right now it's more like Rishi on the rack. But, you know, if, for instance, they get a following breeze, you know, Starmer stuffed, or in the end, the thing I really, really hope that at Kingston, that the voters dump Davey. Kick him out. He wouldn't see Mr Bates. Tell your friends.
All right, well, next, as Labour is announcing that plan for 16-year-olds to vote and the Tories want to send them off to war, in a way, not quite. I'll be having a little chat about all of that and a revolutionary communist debate, someone who survived communism. What's not to love?
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to our latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So there's been plenty of showers around for many of us today, and there's further rain expected over the next couple of days, all thanks to low pressure situated out towards the west of the UK, slowly moving its way towards us over the next couple of days, bringing some heavy rain and some blustery showers. Any showers that we have seen across eastern parts of Scotland and northern England will gradually ease as we head through the rest of this evening, leaving some clear spells overnight here, but down towards the southwest, a very different picture. Plenty of cloud around and some outbreaks of heavy rain moving in. Temperatures here around 12 or 13 degrees, but definitely a little chillier under those clearer skies, and quite a bright start for parts of Scotland and northern England through Tuesday morning. However, down towards the southwest, it'll be a much greyer and damper picture to start on Tuesday. Those temperatures starting the day around 13 or 14 degrees, and heavy and persistent rain continuing through much of Tuesday morning, particularly across Northern Ireland and parts of Wales. As I mentioned, a bit of a brighter start across parts of Scotland, albeit a chilly start in places. However, there will be some sunshine as we head through Tuesday morning. But in towards the afternoon, that area of rain continues to push its way northwards, eventually reaching into parts of northern England and Scotland later too. Behind that area of rain, plenty of showers across Northern Ireland, Wales and into southern and central parts of England too. Again, with some hail and thunder mixed in, so some heavy downpours likely. Another warm day, temperatures around 17 or 18 degrees, so around about average for the time of year, although perhaps just a little cooler under that cloud and rain further north. Wednesday does start a little brighter for most of us, plenty of sunny spells through the morning, but quite quickly as we head towards the afternoon there'll be plenty of showers developing. Again, these heaviest across eastern parts of England and Scotland, and there could be some hail and thunder mixed in. Further showers as well on Thursday, but there are some hints of high pressure returning towards the end of the week and in towards the weekend.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
It's not what we do, I doubt it. We've got the energy, we'll tell you all about it. I searched for my spark and I found it.
Rishi Sunak's forced to defend national service.
First thing, no, I'm not sending everyone off to join the army.
And Labour don't bother trying to defend letting kids vote. How many 16-year-olds pay proper tax in this country?
Why are you so worked up about it?
Also, do you remember this?
Skydiving, motorcycling, fast catamaran sailing, the wide range of things I'll do.
Well, can you guess where that man, Steve Baker, has decided to go to campaign? I will tell you all a little bit later on. And
I'm entirely opposed to the capital system and the horrors that it produces.
I've got a big debate. A revolutionary communist, not her, versus someone who has actually lived through communism. Plus, Angela Rayner's really struggling.
If me resigning as an MP now would bring a ceasefire, I would do it. I would do it.
And Rishi Sunak's election balls up continues. There he is, like a vintage Maradona. Oh, grief. Oh, it's a hard watch. Also, what's this iron?
Feeling everywhere this managed to happen.
Yeah, I'll tell you what's all that about. Plus, on my panel this evening, it's Express columnist Carol Malone, broadcaster and journalist Benjamin Butterworth, and The Spectator's political bloodhound, it's James Heal. Oh, and doesn't this make you proud to be British? Get ready, Britain, here we go. What is more mad? Kids voting or national service? Next.
It's 2 minutes past 10. I'm Theo Chicomba in the GB newsroom.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has described the strike, which reportedly killed 45 people in the southern Gazan city of Rafah, as a tragic mishap. Mr. Netanyahu says we are investigating the incident and will reach conclusions because this is our policy. He also told the Israeli parliament it was vital that Israel took every precaution possible to protect civilians caught up in the fighting for Gaza. In a separate development, Israeli forces said they were investigating reports of an exchange of fire between Israeli and Egyptian soldiers close to the crossing. The IDF said a shooting incident occurred on the Egyptian border. It's understood the incident is under review and discussions are being held with the Egyptians. The Prime Minister has defended his plan to make all 18-year-olds carry out national service, describing it as modern and bold. Rishi Sunak says the proposals will mean young people will get the skills and the opportunities they need, which will serve them well in life. He says it will make society more cohesive.
I believe this is the right thing to do because this is how we'll deliver a secure future for everyone and our country. We're not going to do that without taking bold action, and that's a type of leadership that I offer. And this modern form of national service will mean that young people get the skills and the opportunities they need, which is going to serve them very well in life. It's going to foster a culture of service, which is going to be incredibly powerful for making our society more cohesive. And in a more uncertain and dangerous world, it's going to strengthen our country's security and resilience. So for all these reasons, I think this is absolutely the right thing to do.
Meanwhile, the Labour leader has described the Conservatives' plan to reintroduce national service as desperate. Speaking after his first keynote speech of the campaign, Sir Keir Starmer dismissed the Prime Minister's proposals.
You've got desperate policies being made up on the hoof by the Tory party, and then the image of their party arguing about the policy they only announced in the last couple of days. And that, in a way, is the choice at the election, a Labour Party that is laser-focused on the issues that really matter to people and saying we're going to fight for you, and a Conservative Party that's out of road, out of ideas, driven by chaos and division, and that has a cost, a human cost.
The Royal Navy's Type 45 destroyer HMS Duncan has been deployed to the Red Sea. The warship left Portsmouth on Monday and will replace its sister ship, HMS Diamond, which has been deployed in the region to deter Houthi attacks since before Christmas. The Ministry of Defence say during its time in the Red Sea, HMS Diamond has shot down 9 drones and 1 missile launched by Houthi attacks from the coast of Yemen at cargo ships. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews/alerts. Now it's back to Patrick.
All right, welcome along. So there are 2 policies which appear to have been drawn up on the back of a fag packet: votes for kids and national/community service. Both of these policies will change Britain forever. And you are confronted with the choice of which one you would rather live with. So Labour wants 16-year-olds to get the vote. The main arguments for this seem to be 16-year-olds pay tax and they can fight for Britain in the armed forces, so they should be able to vote. Keir Starmer has been saying this stuff for a while.
Can have babies, they can work, they can join the army, so there are big things you can do at 16 and 17. And again, it's not such an outlandish idea. In Wales, it already happens. In Scotland, it already happens. So again, we're looking at voting.
The problem with that is that vanishingly few 16-year-olds will actually pay proper tax. How many of them do you know who earn more than £12,500 a year? And they can't fight and die for Britain. They're not allowed to enlist in the army without parental consent, and they can't be deployed on active duty. For people on the right, the concern is that 16-year-olds are likely to be more left-wing, and therefore allowing them to vote could fundamentally change the landscape of British politics forever and would load the dice in Labour's favour. I did put this to Labour's Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth. I can't help but wonder if he was trying to gaslight us a little bit by claiming this was no big deal. How many 16-year-olds pay proper tax in this country?
Why are you so worked up about it?
Oh, here we go. No, I'm not worked up. I'm asking you to justify. I'm asking you to justify something. No, hang on. That could seriously shape and change forever the future of British politics. And then you've got Rishi Sunak's National Service Initiative. Well, we heard Mr Sunak was taking Saturday off to try to regroup after a tough start to his campaign. Then on Saturday night, wallop, National Service for all 18-year-olds. But on Thursday, Defence Minister Andrew Morrison said that there were no plans for National Service and that it would be a bad idea. The policy was absolutely torn to shreds by young people.
What are they going to do? What's going to happen? Going to shoot me? I doubt it. They have to catch me first. I'm like a whippet.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
We're gonna do it anyway. We're gonna do it anyway. We're gonna do it anyway.
Surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise.
And then Mr Sunak had to come out and re-explain it.
TikTok, sorry to be breaking into your usual politics-free feed, but I'm making a big announcement today, and I've been told that a lot of you already have some views on it. So, first thing, no, I'm not sending everyone off to join the army. What I am doing is proposing a bold new model of national service for 18-year-olds. They'll be able to choose to spend 12 months in a full-time military commission, or 1 weekend per month volunteering in roles within your local community.
There has been huge confusion over whether or not this will work logistically, who would be exempt, if we can afford it, and if the parents of those who refuse to take part get fined, even though presumably their children are now fully grown adults. So how can you find the pet anyway? Anyway, on July the 4th, you are going to have to choose. Do you want 16-year-olds to vote, or do you want 18-year-olds to get military experience or do community service? Let's get the thoughts on my panel. It's Daily Express columnist Carol Malone. I have also got journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth and political correspondent for The Spectator, James Heal. Carol, votes for kids or bit of military service and delivering prescriptions to old people?
Well, I think the Starmer thing that, Labour have been talking about this for years. This is a cynical, anti-democratic move, and it's designed, in this case, to get them elected for a second time.
You think that's what it is? Just to emphasise on that, then. Do you think this is shameless vote rigging for the Labour Party?
I think it's a shameless vote rigging scheme. And I think, the people who are always calling for 16-year-olds to vote tend to be 48-year-old politicians. And if they're not them, they're the Guardian readers or the old codgers in the House of Lords. So it's not the kids themselves that are out there screaming about the fact they're being disenfranchised. It's actually older politicians who want to use them and their votes as a cynical ploy to win votes. So I think you had a young guy on a programme before this. I know we shouldn't talk about programmes that aren't yours, but he just said, have you all guys forgotten what it's like to be 16? We're not interested in politics. We don't want to vote. We're not. He thinks there would be no take-up, and I think that's absolutely the case.
The reason I disagree with that, whilst I respect your view, Carol, is that I think the schools they'll put minibuses on. So you'll see it. Polling day, there'll be minibuses at the schools. All right, kids, we're not going to tell you how to vote, but make sure you get in the truck and let's just remind you what the Tories would do to you. That kind of stuff. But Benjamin, do you think this is shameless vote rigging from the Labour Party?
Well, I think if anything's cynical, it's saying that extending the franchise shouldn't happen because of how they might vote. That is the exact argument that was used against the suffragettes who wanted to let people like Carol vote.
Oh, so, I don't. People like Carol.
Women.
Do you mean women? I was just going to say women.
I've worked out what one is, and
yes, good.
and that was the argument that they used to stop women voting. So I don't think that's a good idea.
Do you really think 16-year-olds are politically aware? I'm not talking about the odd, weird genius who was interested in politics since the age of 10. I'm talking about 16-year-olds generally. Do you think they're politically aware, and do you think they care?
I think two things. I think one is that if you can have a child, and that's the ultimate responsibility a person can take on, then you ought to have the state has a big impact on your life, so you ought to have the right to vote.
At 16, you can't join the army, you can't get married.
You can join the army.
Well,
you can't fight, but you can join.
You make tea for the lads who go out and do the heavy lifting.
So, you're allowed to vote. And, if you can't pay taxes, why should you have a say in the distribution of them?
But can I say one other thing,
which is that most 16-year-olds aren't full-time employed.
We know that the evidence says that people that vote in the first election they're eligible are far more likely to vote throughout. So I think having 16-year-olds who are in full-time education or training would be great for democracy.
James, as our resident weird genius who was interested in politics from the age of 10.
Yes,
let's not attacked. Let's shift this over to the Tories now. And there is, I think, quite a credible argument to be made for the idea that terrifying the bejesus out of a load of 18-year-olds that you might end up sending them off to war and their parents, who are, dare I say it, more likely to vote, might not be a great thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need a big contract here, right? You know, the thing is, look, if we're going to put people on, tuition fees, for instance, maybe there can be some model where they do some national service in terms for a tuition fee reduction, perhaps. I think a big conversation. I mean, it used to be said about, Keir Starmer, you didn't know what a woman was. I think nowadays we don't know what a child is, which is that, you see last week in the House of Commons, Kim Leadbeater had a bill before the House of Commons to make graduated driving licences until people were 25 years old. Now they're trying at the same time reduce the voting age from 18 to 16. So I think we need a big conversation on what age do we have rights and responsibilities. Bear in mind, of course, it's the same Labour Party and the Tories, of course, who also are saying that, you have to ban cigarettes for anyone born after 2009. I think we're really confused about what it actually means to be an adult, what kind of responsibilities we start putting them on. And I think, I'm just saying, if we have voting age reduced to age 16, we ought to talk about some of the responsibilities that come with that too.
Well, yeah, indeed. And that is one of the things. I mean, the Labour Party are against 16-year-olds being able to look at naughty websites, but they would be mentally capable of going out and voting.
Of this country. And I think that, when Sunak, he made a pig's ear of trying to, putting this policy in the first place. But when you drill down, I mean, the kids I read about today in various papers, they think there's something to be got from this. They're talking about letting them explore fire and rescue service, cyber defence, logistics, all that stuff, which I think will be very interesting, kids. And, young people today are now cut off from their communities, from the world, by social media, by being on the headphones and on the screens all day. This will give them an idea how the world works, how communities work, how to give something back. They're talking about them having to work with the elderly and lonely people. This is a great thing. This helps them connect to their community.
Have you tried, if you want them to connect to the community, young people, sort of, as they get into adult life, why don't you let them be able to, get a job that's secure and pays enough to get on the housing ladder? That's the kind of thing. That's the kind of thing that young people, as they grow up, if they had that kind of opportunity, would make them invest more in society.
This is better than them working in Pret or doing nothing at all. This is much better for them. And what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen if we have a war? There's going to be conscription anyway, whatever happens.
Right, but we're not preparing for a war, so that's a quite different scenario. And there are 800,000 people in this age bracket and only 30,000 military bases proposed. But let me say this. This has got nothing to do with young people and everything to do with much older people, because the polling says it's reform-supporting former Tories who like this idea. Right
on cue, here is a poll carried out by JL Partners between the 2nd and the 5th of May. The question, would you support or oppose compulsory military service for young people? Overall support was 42%. Oppose it was 34%. Net support among the age groups, here we go. So 18 to 34-year-olds, -3. 35 to 49, -5. 50 to 64-year-olds, +14. Over 65s, +26. Now, among the political parties, 2019 Conservative voters, +30 overall. 2019 Labour voters, -7 overall. Reform UK supporters, +38. I mean... The reality is, James, that this is what we've got to go off. This is actually a relatively popular thing.
Yeah. The question is, of course, why didn't the Tories do more with it sooner, really? Yeah. And, of course, when he was Chancellor, Rishi Sunak did cut the funding for the National Citizenship Scheme, which was Cameron's attempt to kind of create a peacetime equivalent of this. I think the question is, of course, we need a bigger conversation about kind of, if we're going to expect young people to do more for the elderly, what are we going to get in return in terms of, giving them having the start up for life, and things like housing, things like tuition fees, for instance. So I think the question is, of course, is that, putting this in an election time is a very difficult thing, because you've only got 6 weeks to explain the policy.
Right, look, quickly, what is more of a vote winner? I'll go back down that, because these are two big policies. I appreciate, by the way, that I genuinely think both of them have been drawn up on the back of a fag packet with no real thought about their practical implication, but they're happening, OK? So when you go and vote on July the 4th, this is part of what you're voting for. Which policy do you think is better?
I think national service has more to commend it as a whole than 16 to 18-year-olds. And I said that even when I was 16, I didn't want the vote, and I was one of those freaks you talked about.
I didn't say freak. OK, cool. What do you think? Honestly, in your heart of hearts.
I would have loved to vote at 16, but no, I don't think either of them are things that people should vote on. I think they're all both about creating a conversation to distract from the lack of ideas on the substantial question.
Yeah, I agree with that to a point, I think. Go on, Carol.
I think Rishi's would cut through with more people, and I think what Starmer is doing is just totally opportunistic for the Labour Party.
Interesting. I mean, look, Jonathan Ashworth before, there's a longer clip of that interview, by the way, but my general impression of it. He's trying to kind of gaslight us a little bit, I think, by saying, well, it's not a big deal. We know what it's about. I mean, it is a fundamental change to the British voting system.
Hang on, the proof it's not a big deal is the fact you've forgotten that in Scotland and Wales, 16-year-olds already have the vote.
I've not forgotten. It's just not a thing here.
Yeah, but the ceiling of democracy didn't collapse in because 16-year-olds in Wales are voting, did it?
Fair enough.
Well, you've got five in Scotland. The population is about 5.5 million. So of the 16, it's not going to make any difference there for 16-year-olds voting.
OK, now, coming up. Rachel Reeves has pledged... This is another big dividing line at the election, this. She's pledged no national insurance or income tax increases. But do you believe her? Plus, Rishi Sunak still desperately trying to prove that he's a right-winger. Oh, yeah, you see what we did there? Stick to politics, I'd say. More of that when I bring you the very first of tomorrow's front pages. But next, this is going to be good, I think. Do you remember this fiery communist?
I'm entirely opposed to the capitalist system and the horrors that it produces.
Well, the young lady there taking on Suella Braverman is Fiona Lally. Now, she's standing for the Revolutionary Communist Party in Stratford and Bow. But what is her party's vision for Britain? So next, I've got an admissible debate. It is a revolutionary communist versus someone who actually lived through communism in Romania. I think it might be worth a watch.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
2,000 football banning orders have been issued to England fans ahead of this summer's Euro 2024 tournament in Germany. But authorities think that more than 300,000 England supporters could go to Germany, with Scotland fans, of course, also expected to travel in huge numbers. Well, I'm joined now by GB News' home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. So you went to a press briefing this morning. As I understand, the authorities are gearing up to tackle what they see as a huge wave of potential hooliganism at the tournament. What's the latest?
Well, they're certainly not saying they're expecting hooliganism, and they are preparing for the worst, of course, if it happens, but hoping for the best. They say that in recent tournaments, England fans and, of course, Scotland fans have been pretty well behaved, but there will be very significant numbers attending that tournament, which gets underway in just over 5 weeks' time. That first match is Scotland taking on Germany in Munich, and of course just 2 days later it's England against Serbia near Dortmund. So 300,000 England fans alone they're expecting, because it's so accessible. I spoke earlier to Chief Constable Mark Roberts, who is the national lead for football policing. This is what he told me.
Positive, you know, England fans got a great record at recent tournaments. We know when any number of that people travel, there's always potential for issues, but I think the German authorities are really well prepared. And I think one of the positives, particularly thinking about our fans, Germany's a beer drinking culture, so the police are well aware of dealing with people in the nighttime economy. They deal with plenty of big festivals, so I think we're going to a place that is well suited to work with us to keep everyone safe and make sure there's no issues.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. All of tomorrow's newspaper front pages are coming up very, very soon. But first, the Revolutionary Communist Party have announced that they will be standing candidates at the election on July the 4th. And you might recognise one of them.
Hi everyone, I'm really excited to announce that I'm going to be standing in the general election. And I'm doing so because the entire political establishment, from the Tories to Labour, are completely out of touch on the question of Palestine.
So that was Fiona, who is the communist who joined me on this show just weeks ago and took former Home Secretary Suella Braverman to task.
I don't want to talk to any war criminal. Capitalism produces war and produces imperialism, which fundamentally has been driving everything that's happened over the last 76 years. It isn't just about the last 7 months or anything like this. I'm entirely opposed to the capitalist system and the horrors that it produces across the world in many different places.
So, as we apparently experience a resurgence of communism in the form of the Revolutionary Communist Party, would communism be good for Britain? Well, I'm joined now by a member of the International Secretariat of the Revolutionary Communist International. It's Fred Weston and Cornel O'Prea, who's a British-Romanian professional pianist who experienced life under a communist regime in Romania. Fred, I will start with you. I mean, it strikes me that communism has failed everywhere and has been responsible for between about 94 and 100 million deaths. Why would we want that in Britain?
Why would we want it? Indeed, nobody would want what you just described. What is communism? That's the point. What failed in Eastern Europe is not communism, i.e. it's not an economy which is run by the working class democratically, factories under workers' control, with full democratic rights for workers to express their opinions. It was the bureaucratic regime that collapsed. I'm a revolutionary communist, a member of the Revolutionary Communist International, which will soon be founded as an international organisation. And what we're fighting for is for the working class to be in power, for the working class, through its organisations, to have control over the economy, to have control over the big corporations, so that they're not used for the profit of the few, but they're run for the good of society. Like, for instance, the water companies, the gas, the electricity, the railways. They should all be renationalised.
I'll come back to you. Conor, you've lived under
yes, I did.
communism.
Yes.
What was it like for you?
I would say awful, hell, horror. As Fred has mentioned, being everything in the hands of the people or a few. Actually, that happens just probably in theory, because it's not in the hands of the people, it's in the hands of the elite and the Communist Party. People will be just, and they've been suppressed under communism, and they've just been enslaved. It's an enslaved country. That's why borders are closed. They can't leave. Towards the end, 100 Romanians per night were trying to escape the country, and they were actually caught, put in prison 3 to 5 years, shot dead, or they even didn't make it to cross the Danube or their cemeteries around the country. So that goes to show the communism, how well it works.
Yeah, and Fred, what would be different now? Because, I mean, look, with respect, you know, Chairman Mao's sitting up in his grave at the moment, wanting to know why it would be different in Britain under Fred Weston. So why would it be different under you?
Well, I don't think it would be under me. It would be under a system where the workers would be empowered through their organisations, democratically controlled.
Can you explain it? Because wasn't that the plan originally? Hasn't that been the plan every time we've tried?
I don't think that in Romania you ever had that. It didn't even start like that. It started off from day one as a regime that was based on... It was basically a photocopy of what you had in Soviet Russia under Stalin. We don't stand for that. We are Trotskyists. We trace our roots back to Leon Trotsky and the left opposition. These are people who died in the camps defending the real ideas of October, the ideas of Lenin, the ideas of Trotsky, the ideas of genuine revolutionary communism. That's the first thing we've got to distinguish. Two, in an advanced capitalist country like Britain, with the enormous resources and furthermore, a huge working class, the majority of the population is working class, it would be very different, and it would be possible to establish a society where the major corporations, the big ones, are nationalised under workers' control. All officials are elected. No official to earn more than the average wage of a worker. Because one of the problems in Romania was that the officials were privileged elite. I agree. They were living above the working class, right? They were not living like the working class. However, what's curious, I would like to add, is this. I was looking at some of the opinion polls and asked the question, why is it that several opinion polls show that close to half, between 40 and 50% of the population in Romania, look back to the old regime kindly. But I'll tell you what they're looking at. They're not looking at the dictatorship.
Well, why don't we let the Romanian chap explain a couple of things?
I mean, I don't think maybe the elder generation probably thinks things were better then because probably they had more money, but you had more money because there was nothing to buy. I was 6 years old when, under communism, I was queuing for bread for 1 hour. I haven't seen this happening in Britain, and I hope it will never happen. I've seen people die, elderly lady falling and dying because she stayed for too long in the heat. And this is all caused to the heavy food shortages. What, for example, it was during the pandemic, there was nothing. Like, people in my country used to stay from 2 in the morning queuing till in the morning when it was opening the store to buy oil. So there were shortages. That's one point I'm actually scared of Britain becoming communist, because with the border closed, what will be the internal produce?
So when you hear what Fred said there, which is that what we have not had anywhere is proper communism, right? Do you believe that, or is that the natural progression for communism? Is that it would, in your view, does it always end the way it ended for you?
I think it does, because eventually what makes people angry is the shortages, isn't it? Is the hunger. And Britain imports 46%, 50%, 80% fruit. So if there would be no imports, what would we be eating? I don't know, apples, pears?
I don't understand why there wouldn't be imports and why the borders would be closed.
During communism, it's an internal, isn't it? It closes. The borders are closed.
No, it doesn't. We're internationalists. We don't want communism in one country. Actually, we don't think it's possible in one country. That's the whole.
But this is another issue, right? Which is that in order for your ideology to work, the world would have to become.
It has to be international.
Your specific version of communism.
The system that we live under is called capitalism. Yeah. Isn't that also a global system? And let's look at it globally. Talk about hunger. 10% of the world population today, that is about 800 million people, are hungry.
I suppose the problem you have is that you have literally no evidence of your ideas practically working anywhere in the world.
Capitalism, before it came into being, had no evidence that it would work, and yet there were people who fought for it.
We always go back
achieved capitalism.
All right, go on.
We always go back to capitalism because it's been around for about 1,500 years, and it works. It's the only thing that works, because the power gets more distributed. With communism, stays only at the elite. The rest are just working bees.
You say it works. There's 100 million displaced people around the world.
But he's one of them because of communism.
No, he's a musician. I was talking to him. He's a skilled pianist.
Yes, I am a musician.
Right?
But,
he came here freely.
Wasn't your uncle shot?
My uncle actually tried to escape Romania, and he was caught once. Luckily, he couldn't stay in prison much because there were no spaces, because there were so many Romanians trying to run away.
I sympathise with you completely. I'd be horrified at something like that happening. That's not what we stand for. We don't stand for that kind of thing. The Trotskyists, I know you're laughing.
I'm not laughing. I admire your ability to come back to this stuff.
The Trotskyists in the camps under Stalin were killed in their thousands, some of them singing the Internationale with the clenched fist. Those were the genuine communists, and they suffered just like what you're describing to me. So we don't stand for that at all. We stand for genuine communism, and there is that possibility, because, look, you talk about capitalism working. 100 million displaced people. Afghanistan, bombed to bits. Syria, etc. People living in desperate conditions. Congo, the Sudan, the killing that's taking place there, the killing in Gaza, the war in the Ukraine. This is...
All right.
We don't have communism today, as far as I'm aware.
I'm just going to give a very quick final word to you. You're warning for people who are potentially going to go and vote revolutionary communists. What would that be?
I would say this youth is actually being led into a world of horror because they have no idea that after all this, they voted for one thing, which in theory works, but actually it won't work in practice.
All right. All right. Well, look, both of you, thank you very much. I did enjoy that, and I'm getting shouts out because it's gone on longer than we planned, but I was enthralled by it. So thank you, and I hope to talk to you both again very soon. That was a member of the International Secretariat of the Revolutionary Communist International, Fred Weston, and Cornel O'Prea, who is a British-Romanian professional pianist who did experience life under a communist regime in Romania. Coming up, I bring you the best bits of this great British tradition. Plus, what's going on in the skies?
Ceiling everywhere. This managed to happen.
But next, I bring you the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Stay tuned.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So plenty of heavy showers and some outbreaks of rain are on the way over the next couple of days, but there will be some brightness in between. This is all thanks to this area of low pressure situated to the north of the UK, bringing us those heavy showers. But low pressure sits out in the west, bringing some further outbreaks of rain through the rest of Monday and into Tuesday. Plenty of heavy showers continuing into the first part of this evening, but gradually easing overnight with some clear spells developing, particularly for Scotland, northern and eastern parts of England, but down towards the southwest, outbreaks of rain pushing their way north and eastwards into the early hours of the morning, and a mild night here under all that cloud and rain, temperatures around 12 or 13 degrees. Under those clearer spells though, perhaps a little bit of a chillier start with temperatures down into the low single figures, and it does mean a bit of a brighter start here. However, across parts of Wales and southern parts of England, heavy and persistent rain slowly pushes its way north and eastwards through Tuesday morning, and for Northern Ireland as well, that persistent rain continues through much of Tuesday. For Scotland and northeastern parts of England though, a bit of a brighter start, albeit a bit of a chilly start with those temperatures in those low single figures to start, but there will be some sunshine through the morning. However, as we head through Tuesday afternoon, that area of rain continues to push its way north and eastwards as we head through the latter half of the day, again turning quite heavy across northern parts of England and southern parts of Scotland too, so turning much cloudier across Scotland in towards the afternoon. Heavy showers then breaking out across Northern Ireland, Wales and southern parts of England through Tuesday afternoon, and temperatures again around about average for the time of year, around 17 or 18 degrees in the south, but definitely feeling a little cooler under all that cloud and rain. Through Tuesday evening, the rain continues to push its way northwards, although continuing to persist for a time across parts of Scotland, and further outbreaks of rain across southern parts of England as well. There'll be plenty of showers on the way through Wednesday and Thursday, but there are some hints of something a little more settled on the way as we head through the latter half of the week.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's time for the first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Starting with the Metro, Sir Keir, my rocky start in life. You can trust me, Labour leader insists. Starmer tells of his poor childhood. The Daily Telegraph, did you know who's the son of a toolmaker? Anyway, the Daily Telegraph, PM, state pensions will never be taxed. Now, this is another big development. Tories pledge to protect the retirement cash from rising inflation. It's called a quadruple lock. I will go into more detail on this shortly. The Mirror, you can end Tory chaos. Labour leader in pledge to bring UK stability and hope, he says. There we go. Let's go to the Daily Mail. 4 in 10 to quit private school under Keir's tax. Major report finds that the state sector will be swamped if fees rise. There is an exclusive on the front there. Eamon's harsh words on marriage to Ruth that reveal a clue to split. I believe that Eamon will be on GB News tomorrow, breakfast, and might talk about this, so we'll find out then. Anyway, the Times. City figures back Labour with call for new outlook. 120 business leaders have basically backed the Labour Party. Let's focus on the Telegraph, OK, because on the day that Rachel Reeves said that she wouldn't be increasing national insurance or income tax, Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, has now come out and said the state pension will never be taxed under the Conservatives. The Prime Minister will announce plans to give retirees peace of mind and security by automatically raising the threshold at which they start paying income tax each year, so it stays ahead of the state pension. Labour have failed to match the pledge. It's been nicknamed the quadruple lock. Look, James, I'm just going to start with you on this. Do you think this is actually a vote winner? There is a row taking place over tax, right? And this is one of them.
Yeah. I think this is more a vote saver than a vote winner. This is all about shoring up the over 65 vote for the Conservatives. Labour are trying to make roads into what they call the grey wall. So they've had the blue wall, the red wall, now it's the grey wall, the pensioner vote. And, of course, a lot of pensioners, I think, were quite annoyed that, you know, despite having done pretty well the last 14 years or so, they did not actually benefit from the recent national insurance tax cut, which obviously benefits those in work. So those retirees would not have benefited from that. So this is Jeremy Hunt's attempt to try and win back those voters over 65 who might be tempted by reform or even Labour. So it's an attempt to shore up the vote among the older voters. Yeah, looking for the numbers on this. So apparently the state pension is forecast to rise by 430 quid next April. The PM says that this plan would cost £2.4 billion a year, but they're going to pay for that by clamping down on tax avoidance. Benjamin, you just make old people pay through the nose for everything.
Well, first of all, I'd note that the National Service, they said it will cost £2.5 billion and they'll get that from clamping down on tax evasion. Now, apparently, they've got £2.4 billion more from tax evasion, so I'd heavily question where these numbers are coming from. If they've just come up with ideas to get billions from tax evasion changes, well, why didn't they do it for 14 years? On the question, I mean, the complete economic illiteracy. In the last 14 years, the age group that has gained the most wealth in this country is over 65s. A quarter of over 65s are set to be millionaires by the end of this decade.
Oh, this
it's a completely unsustainable situation.
Talking about
and you have a problem.
This is really misleading.
Which people under the age of 40 are finding incredibly difficult if they've had to move to a city for work. And it is complete economic illiteracy. We have a situation where people who go to work, who get the economy turning, are having higher and higher taxes, higher costs of rent and mortgages, and you cannot sustain a country like that, where you give everything to a generation that don't work.
Look, so we have a battle line here. So Labour saying they're not going to tax working people more. That's national insurance, income tax. There are massive questions over, well, what other taxes are there going to be? The Tories are saying, I'm paraphrasing here, Carol, but if you're old, we're not going to tax you to high heaven.
I don't think that's what they're saying. What they're saying is they're going to hang on to what they've already got and maybe just give them a little bit more. I hate, you know, Benjamin's attitude to the elderly. He's always having a go at elderly, like their pension is a gift. It is not a gift. It is they've worked for it all their lives. A lot of them, the few that do have half-decent pensions, have done the right thing all throughout their lives, and this saved. And Labour have already said that when they get in, the students are going to put they're going to take the allowance off again and charge them 55% on their life savings. That's terrible. You know, old people are not getting a gift from the government. They've worked for this money. They've contributed to a system, and they're getting some of it back. They're not getting all of it back. And it's a terrible attitude to the most vulnerable in our society.
They're not the most vulnerable. They're the richest in Britain. Pensioners are the richest generation in Britain, and they take out more than they put in.
You had quite a big say before. More than 2 million people in this country live on nothing but the state pension alone. Do you have any idea what that is, Benjamin? Because you'll spend that on a meal.
But you know what? That's why I think the great many pensioners who are millionaires, who are not worrying, who are doing well, I think that's why people like you should give up a bit more money for people like the pensioners you're talking about.
Who live in a house that they've worked all their life to pay for. That does not make them millionaires. That makes them asset rich. But what should they do? Go live in a scratty flat and give up the house they've worked for all their lives?
I think it's selfish that you have the very wealthy pensioners who are refusing to give up some for the people that really are poor.
It's selfish that they live in a house they've worked all their lives to pay for.
And the fact is, people of my generation, they can work damn hard. And
people of your generation, you earn plenty of money to put a deposit miles an hour. You choose not to. You choose to spend your money on different things.
That's not true either.
And I'm sorry, the people who own houses now, the elderly people you're talking about, they sacrificed in their youth to get a house. You don't. You live in a rented flat and you earn enough money to buy a house. Patrick's bored now, so...
I'm not bored. I'm just enjoying the show. Put my feet up. You're right on the end there, James.
All right,
Is it going well for you? Yeah, good stuff.
In this country, we take money from work.
Shut up. OK, now it's widely accepted that the Tories and Labour will be the two biggest parties after this election. But what about race for third? Well, the new Scottish First Minister John Swinney was out campaigning in Dumfries today, and he admitted that the SNP has ground to cover to catch up with Labour in the polls.
I want to bring people in Scotland together. I want to unite people in Scotland on an agenda to make Scotland a better country. And that's about tackling some of the issues that are really significant and damaging for Scotland that we've had in recent years. The impact of austerity, the impact of Brexit, the impact of the cost of living crisis. I want to address those issues and address them through the election.
But the Liberal Democrats have taken their battle bus north of the border as they launched an offensive to win Scottish votes. Take a listen to their leader, Sir Ed Davey.
The people of Scotland have been doubly let down. Let down by an out-of-touch Conservative government in Westminster and taken for granted by an out-of-touch SNP government in Holyrood. They both have to go.
Coming up, I bring you the best of Britain as the cheese rolling championships come crashing back into the spotlight. And was it fair for a trans woman to win Best Female Actress at the Cannes Film Festival? We will debate that very, very shortly. But yes, but before all of that, I'll give you some more headlines, so stay tuned.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Well, we're delighted about this because the boss of JD Wetherspoon has credited demand for fashionable Guinness as the pub chain reported a jump in sales.
Now, Guinness has benefited from a boom in demand over recent years, shaking off its association with rugby lads and old men to appeal to a much younger audience and loads more women.
We've got our Guinness here.
Oh, yeah.
Cheers to you.
Cheers.
I'm not sure about this boozing on air at this time of the morning, but I'll let you off on this occasion.
As it's you, Tim, as it's you. Now, Guinness is an acquired taste for many people, so I'm surprised it's become so popular.
Yes, it is a real surprise. I think it's always been a popular drink among the demographic you mentioned, the older guy. There's about 80 or 90% of pub trade over the last 30 or 40 years, and probably longer, are a similar range of products. But there's a varying 10, 20% according to fashion. You had vodka Red Bull 20 years ago. You had an Irish cider poured over ice, which came from no one knows where. You had Alco Pops. So there's an unpredictable range of products which have been the fashion of the moment. But the fashion of the moment, very unpredictably this time, is Guinness. And no one knows why. As you say, it's an acquired taste. Young people tend not to like it. Most of the fashionable drinks over the decades have been quite sweet. And Guinness obviously isn't. So, yes, I think the Guinness brewery, St James's Gate in Dublin, they'll say it's brilliant marketing. But like the rest of us, they rely a bit on luck.
Welcome back. It's time to whiz you through some more front pages. Let's do it. The Guardian, global outrage after dozens killed in Israeli airstrike on Rafah camp. We've got the Eye. Labour mayors warn Starmer, we will fight for a better deal. The Labour Metro mayors say they are ready to stand up to Starmer. They want more money, I think, don't they? So let's go to the Independent. Now it gets personal. Voters like and trust Keir more than Rishi. However, it does get a little bit worse for Rishi Sunak, as you're about to hear, because this is the poll that will strike fear into the Conservative campaign headquarters more than any other. Responding to a YouGov poll, a whopping 59% of people said they'd be disappointed or dismayed if Rishi Sunak was to achieve a majority. Back in 2019, this number was 52% when asked about how they'd feel about Jeremy Corbyn. So Rishi Sunak is polling worse than Corbyn was when he was obliterated by Boris Johnson at the ballot box. Carol, what do you make of that?
Well, I mean, it upsets me. I mean, he's missed so many chances to do things better. But what's waiting for us terrifies me, because I don't think Starmer is ready to lead this country. I don't think his party is ready to lead this country. It terrifies me.
Go on, James. That is quite stark.
It is. I will say, though, that talking to Labour campaigners this time around, they remember, like, 5 years ago when Corbyn was out there as the leader, people were screaming at them saying that Labour was a party of terrorist sympathisers, for instance. I don't think Rishi Sunak is eviscerating that, getting that same reaction this time. No. I think the thing is much more about the party. I think the country's just generally done with the Conservatives after 14 years of government. That's the problem for them.
And if you look at the polling numbers, Rishi Sunak's personal popularity has fallen to the level of the Tories' popularity. He was doing a bit better when he took over. But the fact is that, when people can't afford a quality of life and they've seen it get worse for the last 14 years, then what do you expect them to think? How do they expect them to feel about the person that's been in charge?
Well, a lot of things have happened, Ben, in those 14 years. We had COVID, for instance, for a start. We've had the war in Ukraine. We've had the economy crashing. We've had all sorts of things.
It would be interesting to see how Boris Johnson was polling.
Yes,
it would. It's one of life's great unanswered questions.
For me,
it's one of life's unanswered questions.
He's one of the top 3 worst prime ministers we've had in the last 5 years.
Yeah, you're nice. You're entitled to that view. I mean, the fact is, it probably will be better than this. Now, look, the annual cheese rolling event in Gloucestershire. This is what you came for, people. The annual cheese rolling event in Gloucestershire. OK, it took place today, but let me tell you, it's no walk in the park. The venue is Cooper's Hill, which has an average gradient of over 45 degrees. It's 180 metres long in length. The rules are simple. A wheel of cheese is thrown down it, and the first to the bottom wins that cheese. Sounds easy? We'll take a look at this year's races.
Election.
Absolutely brutal, but that is nothing compared to this year's women's race. Take a look at this person in the red jumper. We've circled her on your screen, OK? Watch carefully. Watch carefully. So they're off. The cheese is going down the hill, and she's just, oh, my good gosh. Seriously, that is unbelievable. So apparently she's about... Let's take another look at this. So the firing gun goes. That is said wheel of cheese being rolled down a hill. This cheese can hit 70 miles an hour. Off she goes. She runs. She takes 2 steps. She's staggered. She is taking the ragdoll approach to a mountain. And she's off screen. She's gone so far off screen. Everybody else is going down on their backside. I mean, yeah, believe it or not, she won. Yes, she did win. And she was absolutely fine in her post-race interview.
I mean, do you have like a tactic? Do you have a way of doing it? What's in your mind?
Mostly like off the get-go to run and then take it where it goes. So I think I don't know how I only know how it feels. I don't know how it looks, but I think I just tumbled down.
It looked awful. I'll be honest, it looked awful. Anyway, I'm sure you're all wondering. The cheese that they get to keep for winning is double Gloucester. Of course it is. Well, let's go to today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass.
Ooh. Woo. No, we just missed a debate.
Carol, who's your great...
We missed a whole debate
because
there.
we're pressed for time, Carol. So if you could just crack on. Who's your Greatest Britain?
Right, my Greatest Britain, Eamon Holmes. Everyone who knows him adores him. All our hearts go out to him. We've heard that his marriage is over now. He lost his mum in the past year. He's got a massive... He's had to sell his house. He loves to pay a tax bill. And now, at a time when he should be loved, cared for and cherished, his marriage is broken up. We all send our love out to him.
We do, and I think we will be hearing from Eamon tomorrow on Breakfast, so make sure you tune in for that.
My Greatest Britain is the Coldplay frontman Chris Martin, because he was performing at the Radio 1 Weekender, and there was a woman trying to get there, but she has arthritis and was struggling to walk to the event. And so Chris Martin and his assistant got her in the car and drove her into the festival herself.
Hasn't she suffered enough?
And she... She was feeling yellow, and I just thought it was a wonderful story. And she said she was 64 and she doesn't go to festivals. She just wanted to see Chris Martin, and she got a better deal than that.
All right, go on.
For me, it's the Gloucestershire Cheese Chasers, particularly Abby Lamp right there, because that was amazing. I mean, she sounded American to me, but she became my honorary Greatest Britain. coming over here and taking our cheeses, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Right, today's winner of the Greatest Britain is Eamon Holmes. So there we go. Right, Union Jackass time now.
Right, mine is bullying senior management at the Lewisham and Greenwich NHS Trust, which has told staff it has to comply with its idiotic trans guidance or be damned. What they've said is they've told all staff that if they say not to confront patients who are going into single-sex facilities, despite what they look like. So if it's a bloke walking onto a woman's ward at 10 o'clock at night, they have to just let them go
Right,
in
I've got a hefty right of reply. Spokesman for the Trust said it's committed to being an anti-discriminatory organisation, saying we are proud of our trans policy, which ensures we treat trans patients with the same high level of dignity and respect offered to all patients. Benjamin.
Yes.
My jackass is the airline Sun Express, which there was a BBC weather presenter whose kid has a really strong allergy to nuts. She asked them to make a declaration on the plane, please don't open nuts. They not only refused, but they threw the family off the flight.
Can we just point out as well, the family was supposed to let the airline know and did not.
But, you know, well, the good news is that EasyJet fixed it the next day, but I thought that was just incredibly poor.
Got another hefty right of reply here. Spokeswoman for the Sun Express said, due to the insistent behaviour of the passenger and others on board, they should not consume nuts. The captain decided it would be safest if the family did not travel with our flight. When this was explained to the passenger, he exhibited aggressive behaviour towards our crew members and then tried to gain access to the cockpit to ensure the safety of our crew and passengers. We don't tolerate aggressive behaviour on our flights. Right, James, so who is your Union Jackass?
I hope this doesn't have any right to reply, but I'm going to go for John Swinney, and not least because you'll hate being called a Union Jackass because he is still a member of the union, and who launched his campaign today, and I'm sure this will fail just like the last 3 general election campaigns with the SNP to break up this great country.
Yeah, I mean, the issue for John Swinney about being a union jackass is that, of course, got the word union in it. You were right to point that out, and he is today's greatest...
Hey.
No, union jackass. He's the greatest, biggest union jackass. There we go. Well done, John. Right. Got a right reply here. No, okay. All right, guys, look, thank you very much. Fantastic show. Thank you very much to everybody who's been watching. We are going to have a fantastic build-up to the general election right here on Patrick Christys tonight, all the way through. So make sure that you keep it GB News 9 to 11. Headliners are next for a much more detailed look at tomorrow's newspapers, inside and what's on the front of the book. Thank you to everybody who's been watching and tuning in. I will, of course, be back again tomorrow from 9 p.m. So do tune in for that. Up next is Headliners, but right now, we have the latest look at your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So there's been plenty of showers around for many of us today, and there's further rain expected over the next couple of days, all thanks to low pressure situated out towards the west of the UK, slowly moving its way towards us over the next couple of days, bringing some heavy rain and some blustery showers. Any showers that we have seen across eastern parts of Scotland and northern England will gradually ease as we head through the rest of this evening, leaving some clear spells overnight here, but down towards the southwest, a very different picture. Plenty of cloud around and some outbreaks of heavy rain moving in. Temperatures here around 12 or 13 degrees, but definitely a little chillier under those clearer skies, and quite a bright start for parts of Scotland and northern England through Tuesday morning. However, down towards the southwest, it'll be a much greyer and damper picture to start on Tuesday. Those temperatures are starting the day around 13 or 14 degrees, and heavy and persistent rain continuing through much of Tuesday morning, particularly across Northern Ireland and parts of Wales. As I mentioned, a bit of a brighter start across parts of Scotland, albeit a chilly start in places. However, there will be some sunshine as we head through Tuesday morning. But in towards the afternoon, that area of rain continues to push its way northwards, eventually reaching into parts of northern England and Scotland later too. Behind that area of rain, plenty of showers across Northern Ireland, Wales and into southern and central parts of England too. Again, with some hail and thunder mixed in, so some heavy downpours likely. Another warm day, temperatures around 17 or 18 degrees, so around about average for the time of year, although perhaps just a little cooler under that cloud and rain further north. Wednesday does start a little brighter for most of us, plenty of sunny spells through the
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking? Not a line, I never won a penny in my life.
I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life. Oh my God. Oh, God. Oh, it shocks me. This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Emma, let's start, shall we, with Prince William confirming on the Isles of Scilly yesterday that Kate is doing well. I thought it was a very brave lady to say, "Are we allowed to ask how the Princess of Wales is?" And I thought, well, we're not, so good for you.
Yeah. One of the hospitals he visited on the Isles of Scilly, an administrator, a hospital administrator, asked him how Kate was doing, and he said, "She's doing well, thanks."
Until we hear official word from the palace, then we're just going to have to rely on little snippets like this.
It does seem to be serious. So
It does.
We wish her
What's
very, very
quite
best.
telling as well, I went through some of the social media comments on this, and people that live on the Isle of Scilly were just saying how close they got, how wonderful it was. He's supporting local businesses, and that pasty shop will now be like treasured, you know, forever. People forever go there.
On the Quay. It sounds great. It's called On the Quay.
Compare and contrast with this "I feel at home in Nigeria" vibe that Meghan's putting out. Two very, very different takes on how to be a royal.
Do they want to be royals or do they not? Because they seem to want sort of half the trappings but without all the kind of responsibilities.
These two brothers, who obviously went through a lot growing up, obviously can't stand the sight of each other right now, and it's just really sad.
Well, it goes beyond the brothers. I mean, we are told from some of the papers this morning that the King didn't have time in his schedule to see his son because he was actually meeting David Beckham for a private meeting.
Well, who would you choose?
All about priorities.
I mean, I know I
It's all about priorities.
But, you know, you surely, I mean, you could just pop in as well. I reckon that Harry and Bex are pals, probably. So what's gone on there, and will they ever be able to repair things?
And they really were so close. I mean, when you compare the Buckingham Palace garden party, a couple of miles down the road, literally Harry was at Westminster or wherever it was. It wasn't far.